Find people who have what you want. Do what they do, and you'll get what they've got. This is the powerful mantra of my guest today, Thomas McPherson. While Thomas's day job is in real estate, his journey is anything but ordinary. From serving as a combat medic in the military to pursuing adrenaline-fueled adventures like base jumping, Thomas's experience have shaped him into the remarkable person he is today. So buckle up and get ready to take the leap as we dive into the world of Thomas McPherson. Welcome to Journey with Jake. This is a podcast about adventure and how through our adventures we can overcome the challenges of life that come our way. While I expect you will learn some things about different adventures, this show will entertain you. Each episode will feature a different guest or guests as they share experiences and stories from the different adventures they have been on. Not only will you be entertained, but you will also hear the failures and trials each guest faces and what they have done or are doing to overcome the hardships that come their way. My goal is to take each of us on a journey through the experiences of my guests with the hope that you'll be entertained and inspired to overcome your day-to-day challenges. After all, it's not all about the destination as it is about the journey. Another episode of Journey with Jake. I'm your host, Jake Bushman, and I'm thrilled to have you here. Today's episode features an incredible guest, Thomas McPherson. Before we dive in, I want to give a quick heads up. In this episode, Thomas shares some intense experiences from his time in military combat. While these stories are powerful and insightful, they might be tough to hear for some listeners. Thomas isn't just a military veteran. He's also a successful business owner in the real estate world and an adventurer with a passion for base jumping. Yes, that's right. He's one of those brave souls who leap off cliffs and then deploy a parachute. It's wild stuff, and we'll get into all of it. But first, a few quick housekeeping items. If you haven't already, please subscribe to Journey with Jake wherever you listen to podcasts. Number 2, if you're tuning in on YouTube, do me a favor, subscribe to my channel and hit that like button. 3, if you enjoy the show, leaving a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify would mean the world to me. It's a simple way to help spread the word and keep the journey going. Finally, I'd love to connect with you. Follow me on Instagram at Journey with Jake Podcast and send me a DM or leave a comment. I'd love to hear from you. If email is more your style, you can reach me at jake@journeywithjake.net. I'm so excited for you to hear this amazing conversation with Thomas. If you enjoy this episode, I also recommend checking out episodes 27 and 28 with Dave Preston, another adventure seeker with some incredible stories. Okay, let's get to my conversation with Thomas McPherson. Well, I'm excited today. I have Thomas McPherson on the call with me today. Thomas, welcome to Journey with Jake.
Thanks so much, Jake. I'm looking forward to this. Let's have some fun.
Absolutely. Let's have some fun. All right. So, Thomas, I don't know a lot about you. I know a few things about you. I know you were in medical combat type of situation. I think you were in the Navy. I know you like to base jump. You've done some crazy adventurous things. I know you're into sustainability with your job now and things that you've got going on, which is cool. I want to kind of hear a little bit about that as well. Before we get kicking into all those fun adventures that you do, tell me a little bit about who you are, your background, where you're from, and kind of what you got going on.
Yeah, I'd love to. I'm a Midwest boy at heart. I grew up in Missouri, born and raised in Missouri, bounced around kind of the Midwest growing up just a little bit. And then, September 11th happened when I was a senior in high school, and I was drinking the patriotic Kool-Aid, man. I was actually doing keg stands with the patriotic Kool-Aid. And so, I graduated high school a little bit early, and I thought, I'm going to join the military, right? And so I did. I joined the Navy. Shortly after high school, I graduated, and about 9 months later, I was in the Navy. My specialty was combat medicine. I happened to be what's known as a Fleet Marine Force Corpsman, which basically is a combat medic with the Marine Corps. I was stationed out at Camp Pendleton with a couple of infantry units out there, deployed multiple times, including combat deployment to Iraq. And it's a really interesting place. The military is what you make of it. I would say that's true of a lot of stuff in life. And so I got into the military. I did that for 5 years. And when I got out of the military, it was a seamless transition. I got right into real estate in 2009. So it went from kind of one emergency environment into like this other high stress environment as well. And right place, right time. I happened to get into real estate in Phoenix, Arizona in 2009. The market was kind of in an all-time low. and it's been a rocket ship ride ever since. So I've touched a lot of different things in real estate, including lending, real estate development, ownership, brokerage. And I just love what I do, man. It's a ton of fun.
Wow. Okay. Missouri boy, grew up in Missouri. Family situation, brothers, sisters, what's kind of the situation there?
Yep, I've got three younger sisters, and we've got a pretty good age range there. I'm not sure what mom and stepdad were doing there, but 7 years between me and the next sister, 7 years between the next sister, and then 1 year. So I think, I'm not sure exactly but so there's a 15-year age gap there.
I was going to say,
right?
yeah, I was
So,
trying to do the math in my head. I'm like, oh, that puts you
yeah,
15 years above
15 years. So basically, I'm graduating high school and I'm kind of like high-fiving my baby sister who's 2 years old, walking around in diapers. And I'm like, all right, I'm going in the military. I'll see you later. And, she's still in diapers. So it was fun, man. It was cool growing up with sisters. Again, I grew up mostly in the suburbs of St. Louis. I grew up playing ice hockey. That was a real big sport, at least where I grew up. Tons of fun. Soccer and ice hockey were my passions, if you will.
St. Louis Blues fan then, or what?
Big Blues fan, man. They finally won one maybe
Yeah.
5-6 years ago now.
Yeah.
It had been like a 40-year stretch or something, 45 years.
Yeah,
So,
good for you. That's awesome. I enjoy hockey
Yeah.
as well. I lived in Las Vegas for a long time, and they got hockey there. I never even knew what hockey was till hockey came to Vegas. Then I was like, this is pretty fun. So yeah, it's
Yeah, and I
good
think
stuff.
they're the only expansion team that won a Stanley Cup their first year. It was amazing.
They didn't win it. They lost to the Capitals.
Oh, that's
but
right.
They went to the
That's right.
finals
That's right.
though. I think they're the only one that's
That's
gone
right.
to the finals their first year, and they did do that. So that was pretty cool. And then they won it. Not last year,
A couple
but the year
years
before,
later.
whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. So good stuff. That's awesome. Well, very good. How about now? Married, kids? What's kind of the situation now?
Married, yeah. I have an amazing wife who what's the term? I punched above my weight class. So I
Yep.
definitely married up in a big way. My wife's amazing, and we've got two young kids who are just fantastic. I love being a dad. It's the best job in the world. It's a lot of work. It's a 24/7 job, but it is the best, man. I love being a dad. It's so good.
Yeah. It's an adventure in and of itself being a dad for sure. No doubt.
It's like the most Zen Buddhist meditation practice. Like, man, your kids will find all your buttons. They're so good.
They know it. They find it. They're great.
That's right.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So great history that you have. I like the fact that you said seamlessly from the Navy to real estate, which will touch on that in a second. Let's go to that experience that you had in the military, because I think military in and of itself, like you said, it's what you make of it.
Totally.
I haven't had an experience in the military, so I'm not sure. I've had friends and family who've been in. Take me through some of that, kind of what that was like, and how did you get into the whole medicine side of things?
Yeah, well, my mom was really good about instilling in me like, hey, whatever the Navy teaches you, just make sure that's something that you can take with the rest of your life. So you don't want to learn some highly specialized little thing that maybe doesn't apply outside of the military. So I thought, hey, medicine's always been interesting. Even if I don't want to be a medic when I get out of the military, I'll always have that knowledge that I can take with me no matter where I go in life. And I found myself in a few different, situations. Car crashes, you come up on some scene, that's come in handy. But so I decided, hey, medicine would be fun. I grew up shooting, I grew up hunting, I grew up, shooting skeet and trap and all that stuff. So I didn't need practice with the weapons. I wanted to learn another skill. So that's kind of why I got into the medicine side of it. And honestly, I was thinking, maybe pre-med, maybe doctor, maybe something like that down the line in the future. But it was amazing, man. It was a ton of fun. It's about a year of training, which was great. I got to train in Chicago. I got to train in Southern California, Camp Pendleton. I got to spend some time in an otolaryngology clinic, which is, ear, nose, and throat clinic, and sit in on some surgeries and do some septorhinoplasties and some tonsillectomies and some other really amazing stuff. So got exposed to a lot of really cool stuff there. And then, I got sent to kind of the line, as we say, kind of got sent out to a line company. And, that was Marine Infantry Battalion. And that is where the rubber meets the road. And I'll say, you go in, and I was drinking the Kool-Aid, like I said, but after my first deployment, I started to become a little disenfranchised, because I think we were sold a bag of goods in the sense that the Bush administration and Dick Cheney and all their cronies kind of maybe weren't totally forthright with what was going on, in my humble opinion. And I think we can all say that with a certain level of objectivity now, looking back, that there's a military industrial complex there that is definitely at play. And so, I started to become a little disenfranchised, and I saw, man, just like the casualties of war, both on the civilian side and on my side. And, you only need to hold one of your comrades, one of your friends, as they're breathing their last breath before you start to question everything. And being the medic, being the Fleet Marine Force corpsman, that was my job. And it just wears on you, and those things stay with you. So I became a bit disenfranchised, but I stuck with it and thought about continuing my career. But at the end of the day, there were some glass ceilings that, they say, well, you can't advance rank until you've been this rank for a certain number of years. And I just thought, this is crazy. There's guys that have been in 10 years that I'm already far surpassing their abilities, both from a leadership and knowledge, technical, expertise. But I have to be this low rank for another 3 years. This is crazy. So, that's when I decided to get out. But the military is amazing. It's full of amazing people. I've got lifelong friends from the military still to this day. My best two friends are from the military and relationships that I had in the military. And like I said, it is very much what you make it. And the benefits for those that are in the military, they just keep getting better. And now I'm very kind of anti-war. At least I'm a very cognizant that there are bad actors out there, man. There are bad people doing bad things. And we've got some amazing people defending our country. And there's really not many justified wars, I think, in the last, 50, 60, 70 years. I think World War II was like the last really justified war.
Gotcha.
Anyway, that's a little bit of my kind of personal experience and insight on the military. Great people. The mission, unfortunately, our governments aren't always forthright with what's going on.
I hear you. Talk about some of that experience though, because like you said, you're a medical combat guy, so you're right there with people who, like you said, are taking their last breath. What kind of effect did that have on you?
One in particular was I'll share two experiences that they were really heavy, man. I was a teenager in combat. And one experience was, this guy, Lieutenant Lynch, who we were providing security for a convoy. He was in the lead vehicle, an IED went off. And I'll just kind of quickly sidebar. That was one of the hardest things about the combat operations that we were running. There wasn't a clear defined enemy on the other side, right? People were just kind of mixed in with the crowd, or they were setting off bombs, and there was nowhere to funnel your anger, nowhere to funnel that frustration and that vitriol. And so, lead vehicle gets hit by an IED, and I jump out and I'm trying to patch this guy up. He's been hit in the neck and he's just bleeding profusely out of the neck, bleeding all over the place. And we had little compression bandages, but they were kind of vacuum sealed in these packages. And at the time, I didn't think I'm this brand new, line corpsman. I didn't think to pre-cut all of these packages. My hands are covered in blood, and I'm now trying to rip open this package, and I can't get it open. I can't get it open. Finally, like I get a knife or what, I can't even remember now. I get it, and I rip it open, and I'm trying to hold pressure, and I'm holding pressure, and he just goes pale, and he winds up passing away. But I remember thinking for the longest time, for years, man, I remember thinking, if only I would have blank, I could have saved him, right? If only I would have pre-cut my things, I could have kept more blood in his body and we could have saved him. Or if only I wasn't so awestruck by what was happening, I could have moved faster. And the reality is, the odds of me saving him were basically zero. I mean, he was probably going to die no matter what, unfortunately, due to his wounds. But that was really heavy, and that stuck with me for a long time. And that's one of the things that I had to forgive myself for. Is being a medic, you're kind of forced with some of those very unfortunate situations. And another really memorable one was, I remember this checkpoint that we had set up, and this was in the city of Ramadi. There was a lot of bad stuff going on, 2004, 2005, and there was a vehicle. It was right at sunset, and we'd set up some kind of barbed wire and stuff like that. You had to drive through. And the sun's setting behind us, shining, and this vehicle's driving up. And undoubtedly, the driver kind of was confused about what was going on. And they went past this kind of delineation line that we say, hey, engage that vehicle. They're getting too close. And so the machine gunner and we all start shooting at the vehicle, and boom, boom, boom. When we hit the vehicle, and the vehicle kind of stops. And then about 2 seconds later, we hear a baby crying. And we're just like, oh, we go running up. Dad's been shot. He's dead. Mom's been shot. She's dead. Little brother in the back seat been shot. He's dead. And the little sister, who's like 2 years old, is in the floorboard, and she's nicked in the arm. And so I packaged her up, and we wound up taking her to the Women and Children's Hospital in that part of the city. And I just remember thinking, we just made a terrorist. We just made a terrorist. And not to take one side or the other, but if somebody came here to my home and they were rolling down the streets in tanks, like, you'd bet I'm going to do what I think I need to do to defend my country and defend my people. And so that was one of those where after that, I really started to question, what I was doing over there, what I was doing in this foreign land in search of weapons of mass destruction. I didn't find many of those, but we did find a lot of oil. There was a lot of oil over there. So you take a couple of these circumstances and then you really start to challenge your core beliefs. And that has been probably the greatest lesson that I took from the military was I like to add maybe to the end of almost what anybody says now. It doesn't matter if
Right.
it's a government, it doesn't matter if it's a vendor, it doesn't matter who that is. I just trust but verify, or I just maybe whatever you're saying is maybe.
Sure.
So those are some heavy experiences that have really
For
stuck with
sure.
me. And then, of course, man, like there were some beautiful times, amazing relationships with friends that have sprouted from it. It's like, I believe it's A Tale of Two Cities that starts out, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times, right?
Right.
So whatever that means is kind of what it really felt like.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned you've made some lifelong friends out of it. So that's been a blessing. But as far as
Absolutely.
how do you forgive yourself? Like what did it take for you to forgive yourself, Thomas?
I don't even know if I can say I've fully forgiven myself. It's a good question. Yeah, it's a tough one, man. You never, I don't know if I've ever really let go of it. Time helps, certainly. And I can say that when I was getting out of the military, there wasn't a lot of appreciation for the damage that PTSD can do to you. But I undoubtedly, was dealing with PTSD. And when you're in, you've got a sense of camaraderie and of brotherhood and all of those things, sisterhood, that you can look across the room and be like, hey, you were there with me. Or maybe you weren't in the same spot as me, but you've been there and you know what's going on. And then you get out, you come to the civilian world, and nobody knows what it was like. And so I felt really untethered. The first couple of years after I got out of the military were the absolute hardest. They were the darkest because those social connections weren't there to help stabilize me. And so time certainly helped. I've gone through a lot of counseling. That has certainly helped. And now I've just decided to devote and dedicate my life to trying to balance the scales, if you will. Because I think that although my intention may not have been malicious to do bad things, I definitely participated in suffering, a lot of human suffering. And so now I've kind of dedicated my life to trying to be a part of abundance and of human joy and happiness and really doing good in the world, being of service and doing good.
Awesome. I just want to say, as someone who I don't have that experience, so I can't relate at all. But I just want to say thank you from someone like me. Thank you for what you did and who you are. I mean, that means a lot to me. I really appreciate you men and women in the service and what you do. So thank you for that. And again, I'm glad you're learning to forgive yourself. I'm glad you're having some time to kind of do that, because we need people like you and people who are pushing forward. And so I appreciate that.
I appreciate that, Jake. And hey, thanks for paying your taxes.
Absolutely. Right on. So, okay. So you left the military, you went into real estate, but you're an adventurous guy. I know it even said, I think it says on your LinkedIn profile, you're all about adventure. And
Yeah.
I kept hearing about base jumping. Okay. How did you get into base jumping? Because I have not had a base jumper on the show yet. I've wanted to. And so I'm excited to talk about this, because when I think of adventure, that's something I definitely think of, and it scares the heck out of me. So tell me about base jumping.
Well, it scares the heck out of me too. I'm actually afraid of heights. So being a base jumper is a bit of an oxymoron, but here's what it is. Why did I get into base jumping? Number one, skydiving got a little boring. So that's kind of like the next evolution of skydiving. No, I'm joking a little bit tongue in cheek there, but I'm afraid of heights, and I like to do things that scare me because that's when I feel a little bit alive. And maybe there was some hard wiring that got short circuited, being overseas and being deployed. But base jumping is where here's a great way to put it. When I jump off of a cliff, I'm like 5 seconds from death. So my timeline, my lifeline, if you will, is now 5 seconds away from certain death. And when I jump, I have to make the decision, I have to make the conscious choice to deploy my parachute. And it does interesting things to the psyche to have decided to live today, right? Instead of just waking up and existing, you've now decided to live. And being scared that you might die puts a lot of things in perspective. You're like, oh, I forgot to pay that thing, or my kids were kind of squawking about this particular thing. Those all seem less relevant, man. They seem way less relevant when you're like, today I lived. I was almost going to die, but then I lived, right? And the other thing is it doesn't ask for, it doesn't politely request, it demands your total presence. You have to be there in the moment, and it is like meditation to the nth degree. And so that's one of the parts that I love about base jumping. A couple other things that I think are fantastic. You get to go to some really cool places. I go up in the Grand Canyon parts of the world. I've gone internationally and jumped off some just absolutely amazing parts of the planet. And really what it is I'm a lazy hiker. I don't mind hiking up, but I really just want to take the fast way
You
down.
want to get down fast.
Exactly. It's hard on the knees to go down, man. Yeah. No, it's a ton of fun. And I would say to anybody that's considering it, absolutely do it, but do it slowly, do it methodically, find a mentor. And that's true with anything in life. I've got a little mantra that I like to say, and it's find people that have what you want, do what they do, you will get what they've got. It's very simple. And so, find good people, whether that's financial, whether that's business, whether that's relationship wise. We could all use some guidance in our relationships, and take the advice for those things in their life that you admire and that you want.
Wow.
So
Amazing. All right. You got to take me through kind of a jump, let's say. What are you doing? What's going through your mind? So just a couple of years ago, I went on a cruise and we jumped off these little cliffs, like water into water.
yeah.
And I remember being scared off of that. And it wasn't even that far. We're jumping into water. How do you do that? It's hard for me to grasp how you do this.
Yep. A lot of it's preparation, so you pack your parachute really methodically. People ask, oh, do you have a reserve? And I just kind of like laugh, like, no, there's no time for a reserve. Like, get serious, So you pack your parachute really methodically, right? And then typically you're hiking up to what we call as an exit point, which means, that's where you're leaving terra firma. That's where you're leaving the earth, solid earth. And you get to the exit point, you put on all of your gear, you double check all of your gear. Typically you're jumping with a friend, right? They double check all your gear, you double check all their gear. And then you got to start getting mentally present, right? You visualize, just like great athletes, you visualize what you're about to do. And you try and visualize it going really well. But then also I try and visualize, okay, if I get line twist or I get, spun around a little bit, what am I going to do? How am I going to react? That way, if it happens, I'm not panicking. I've already mentally prepared for it, right? So you visualize, you get ready. And then at least for me and for a lot of the folks that I jump with, we do some hugs at the exit, right? We do some high fives and some hugs, and we share a lot of love for everybody that's getting ready to go. And then you got to get in the zone, man. You just got to get like totally present in the zone. And for me, it's like a big deep breath. And then mentally I've committed to going, and 3, 2, 1, see ya. And I start running. And as soon as I start moving, it's go time. And it's actually, as soon as I start the countdown, I know that I'm going. And that's it, man. Once you jump, you get that what's known as like dead air, like when your stomach feels like it's going up into your chest.
Yes.
You get that dead air feeling, and that's the bee's knees. Like that is so terrifying that you cannot mistake that you are alive, in that moment. And so you jump, you wait a little bit because you want some relative wind to start to go by you. The old joke is, hey, take a long delay, because you get to enjoy the view. You've earned it, right? Take a nice long delay, boom, open your parachute, it snaps open, right? Whether you're wingsuiting and flying or you're doing a very short delay, just like a short cliff, enjoy that flight, enjoy that free fall, get a nice good parachute open above you. And then once that parachute's open, man, it is the high. It is the ultimate high, at least one of the ultimate highs that I've ever experienced, because you feel like you just kind of like ran up to death and pulled its tail and poked it in the eye and then ran away, so it's totally fun, man. It's the best. And then you just get to cruise around on the parachute. You're unzipping all your stuff, getting ready for your landing, cruising around, looking for a good place to land. And then you land and you're geeked out. And typically what happens is you say, all right, who wants to go again?
You talked about a wingsuit, and I've seen some YouTube videos of this. I mean, these guys are like flying. They're like flying. It seems like they're flying. You said you've done both. What's your experience?
You can actually gain altitude. There's a guy, I forget his name, in Europe who's created these two little ductless, I think they're two little ductless fans that he straps on, and he can actually generate a fair amount of up upward trajectory. And there were some amazing guys that had some hard wings and some little turbofans that they were affixing to this hard wing. It is incredible. It is absolutely incredible what folks are doing. Wingsuiting it's like those dreams that at least you used to have when you were a kid where you could fly. I very much had those dreams growing up as a kid. And that is it, man. That is it. You got about a 3-to-1, they're getting better, 4-to-1 glide ratio. And so for every, mile of vertical descent or vertical altitude, you can get maybe 2, 3, 4 miles of horizontal distance.
Interesting. Okay.
And so, you ironically, if you want to be a really good base jumper, you have to get good at trigonometry, right? Because you've got to calculate the descent angles of the sides of mountains and stuff like that. And you've got to know what your glide slope is. But it's a ton of fun. You feel totally free. You feel like a bird. And it's unlike anything else I've ever experienced in life. And I'm a pilot. I'm a parachutist. I'm a paraglider, base jumper, wingsuiter, skydiver, all of these things. Wingsuit base jumping is probably as good as it gets. And I'm not the guy that I used to be anymore, in the sense that guys are really good and they'll get down in the crack and really kind of like grind it in there. I've got 2 young kids now, and if I go jumping, my margin of error is much, much bigger now. Those are guys that there is no margin of error. And I'm like, hey, you know what? You're 5 feet off the ground. You're having 100% of the fun. I'll be 50 or 100 feet off the ground, and I'll be having 99.9% of the fun.
You're still having fun. Yeah.
Exactly, man. Exactly. So
have you had any close calls?
I've got a few. I've had a few, man. I remember several. So, your parachute doesn't always come out exactly perfect. I've had a few close calls. One was in Kuala Lumpur at a big event. I'm jumping off this tower and I do a gainer, and it's at nighttime. I do a gainer and I open my parachute. My lines are twisted and I'm now flying at the tower. And, I reach up and at the last second, I'm able to pull the lines and turn the parachute and I miss the tower. Another one, I was in Colorado Park. I jump off of a cliff. Same thing. My parachute was a little twisted and I opened a little too low. I should have opened higher. Talk about margin of error. I opened a little too low and I wound up, trying to get out of it. And I hit a tree. It went through my parachute. I'm glad it didn't impale me. It was like 2 feet away from me. It almost impaled me. And listen, base jumping is a sport that it's not tolerant of mistakes. You can make one mistake and it's okay, but you start compounding mistakes. And the same is true for, I think, a lot in life. In aviation, certainly, one mistake doesn't typically kill you. It's when you open a little too late and the parachute comes out crooked and maybe the winds aren't in a good direction for you. That's when you really start to find yourself in trouble. So I've learned over the years, after watching a lot of friends go in, as we say, just leave more margin for error, because we are human. Mistakes will get made. And that is now how I mitigate the risk of base jumping. There's base jumpers that are living on the edge and it's only a matter of time. And there's, base jumpers that are very kind of cautious and safe. And the old kind of saying is, there's old base jumpers and bold base jumpers, but not a lot of old, bold base jumpers.
That's a good way to say it. I would think about that. Someone in the community like you, I would think there's got to be, you probably hear about it. I don't hear about it because I'm not in the community of it, but you got to be hearing about deaths in this community, because it just seemed like you said there's no room for error in this.
None, man. Frequently, and we had a really kind of, at least for me, it rattled my cage. A dear friend, a mentor, and one of the OGs in base jumping, a guy named Jimmy Poucher, who my heart really cried that day when I found out that he went in, because he was one of the guys that you thought he was so cautious, he was so thoughtful, he was so methodical in his approach. And he went in, and it really kind of, I know a lot of people in the sport really started to question things when Jimmy went in. But we all know, I know that Jimmy would have said, hey man, don't stop because of me, keep doing what you love. And he would probably say, just maybe don't do what I did. Right? Maybe be just a little bit more cautious. But it happens, man. Some really sad stuff with people with kids and good friends and young guys that are in their 20s with their whole life, and young gals in their early life that have their whole life ahead of them. And YouTube and GoPros came out right when I got into the sport. And so we were always chasing that next video to chase likes and to chase views and all that stuff. And I had a lot of friends that went in really quick and early on. And I actually got off of social media and I got away from all that stuff, because I remember one summer, 16 friends went in one summer. It was brutal, just an absolutely brutal summer. And so, when you're young, you're invincible. You think you're invincible. You think you're going to live forever, and you get a little older and a little wiser, and you realize that's very much not going to happen. And so, yeah, it challenges you, man. It challenges you. And so I don't jump quite the way that I used to, especially now that I've got young kids. But I also have aspirations of doing some wild stuff. And the other part of that is I want my kids to see their father living authentic life. I can still base jump, but now I just do it in a much, much safer way. I do it with big margins of safety. I do it with people there checking my gear and I check their gear. And I do it in favorable wind conditions. If the winds aren't good, I don't go. If the landing area isn't as big as I thought, I don't go. If the cliff, vertical component is only, 200 feet and I thought it was 300 feet, maybe I don't go, right? So just all these little things to try and stack the odds in my favor.
Amazing. It's just amazing to me what you've done. And yeah, and I never realized how many people this gets that they go in, because I'm not part of that community. You said 16 over one course of the summer. That's a lot. Those are big numbers. Do you have any particular place that is your favorite that you look back like, oh, I loved jumping here? Is there any particular place? I know you mentioned, Grand Canyon, Colorado, Kuala Lumpur, any place that you're just like your favorite?
A couple. There's Zakynthos. It's a Grecian island. The island of Zakynthos. There's a shipwreck beach, and it's like a 700-foot cliff. The only way to get there is either by boat or by parachute. And you get to jump into this amazing white sand, beautiful turquoise blue beach. I was there with my wife and a whole bunch of friends, and it was just absolutely incredible. So that was super fun. But one of the most amazing epic jumps of my life was Half Dome in Yosemite. And
wow,
you have to start hiking late at night because, the national parks folks don't really like it when people jump that. Understandable.
They probably frown
right?
upon that.
Yeah, they frown upon it. Although, we're supposed to be land of the free, right? Like, I'm just recreating, man. I'm not doing anybody any harm, So it's anyway. That's another topic. But so you start hiking at like midnight, and me and some buddies are hiking up to the top of Half Dome, and you're going by these incredible waterfalls. I mean, 3-story high waterfalls just pumping tens of thousands of gallons, per minute, and it's this, I think, 12-mile hike that takes 5-6 hours because you gain, probably 5,000-6,000 feet of vertical altitude. And we're cresting Half Dome. The sun is rising behind us. I mean, like, just starting to come up. There's a full moon at the west end of Yosemite Valley that is just setting. We're cresting Half Dome. You feel like you're on top of the world. There's some rock climbers that are coming up the face right in the morning. And, we're like, oh my God, are you guys climbing? And they're like, we're zipping up our base jumping equipment. And they're like, oh my God, are you guys jumping? So we were in the Mutual Admiration Society. And that was incredible, man. Jumping off of Half Dome, flying around with your buddies. And then when we landed, we happened to land like right next to this little baby bear. And, my buddy's like, check out the bear. And I'm like, cool, where's the mama?
Yeah.
Right. But that's probably one of my most favorite base jumps. I mean, like, honestly, any jump you walk away from is, a good one.
I would think so. Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's awesome, man. Thanks for sharing that. That sounds intense. I'm feeling all intense just listening to you talk, and I'm not even doing anything. So yeah, that's amazing.
I love it.
And I sense the energy too. It's just crazy.
But, what I say is, man, like, find something that scares you. That can be public speaking. That can be introducing yourself to someone. I've got a guy on team who, he's an amazing, sharp young guy, and he went and watched me do a base jump. And he's like, whoa, man, that fires me up. And I go, hey, you know what you should do today? Something that scares you. I was like, what scares you? He's like, oh, introducing myself to people. I go, great. Go introduce yourself to 10 people today. And he's like, whoa. He's like, my hands are getting sweaty. I go, listen, let me tell you what's going to happen. Numbers 1 through 3, you're going to be scared. Your heart's going to be pumping. You're not going to like it. It's going to be awkward and scary and threatening. And then 4 through 6, you're going to be like, okay, this isn't so bad. 7 through 9, you're going to be like, okay, I think I got this. This isn't nearly as bad. And then by number 10, you're just going to walk up and practically high five the person. Like, hey, what's going on, man? My name's Thomas. Nice to meet you. And your presence changes, your energy, your aura changes. On number 1, you kind of, oh, hi, excuse me, what can I do? And then by number 10, you're fully developed. And I think that we need to challenge ourselves in life to fully bloom our minds, to really kind of fully self-develop. And so that's one of the things that I love about base jumping and other aspects of my life is that it scares me and it challenges me and it forces me to grow as a person.
That's such a great example of a life lesson, because I look at my own life and something as simple as Journey with Jake, this podcast. It was scary at first. I remember reaching out to ask somebody, do you want to be on my, like, just scared out of my mind to even ask them. And now I'm like,
you're so comfortable.
100,
You've got great questions.
I love
you're
it.
Firing away. You're crushing it.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. But now there's other things I need to do with it to make it better and improve and things. And just keep moving. And I'm uncomfortable with those things that I got to do. So I love that lesson. That's such a great lesson. I appreciate you sharing that.
And people ask me like, well, aren't you afraid? It's like, yes, I'm not superhuman. I'm not a robot. I'm not some psychotic person that doesn't have that fear switch. I am afraid. But here's what I do. I acknowledge the fear. I say, hey, fear, I see you. Now get in the back seat. Don't touch the radio. I'm driving. This is my life. Okay. I see you. I acknowledge you. You're there. You're valid. But you don't get to touch the steering wheel. You're in the back. I don't let fear dictate the terms of my life to me.
That's fantastic. I can tell this has helped you with your career you have now. And so do you mind kind of sharing a little bit of what you got going on now? Because I know you're in real estate, you're in sustainability, kind of what you have going on and why does it inspire you so much?
I think the built environment is amazing, man. It is amazing. Number one, it's one of the most uniquely human things on the planet. There are certainly other animals that make little homes and little dens, but broadly speaking, the anthroposphere or the built environment, I mean, we interact with it, only 25 hours out of the day, give or take, right? So I think the built environment is a grossly underutilized resource. And it's really exciting for me because more or less construction practices haven't changed for the last 100 years in a meaningful way. We're only now starting to tap into that. But the built environment is an opportunity to, number one, foster connection among people and the natural environment, right? It's an opportunity to increase the health of the occupant. You can do that through letting more natural light in, through better air filtration, water filtration. You can be a good steward of our resources, energy resources, material resources. You can invest money that is earning a good return while improving communities. The list goes on and on. There's tax breaks and benefits. And so I view real estate as this amazing opportunity, this intersection of creativity, this intersection of financial reward for taking appropriate risks and for doing good and doing well by doing good, right? And it's just an amazing opportunity for me. So on the real estate side, and what I do is, my company, Lukrom, we provide financing to other investors, real estate investors that are out there doing, property fix and flips, or they're building homes and they're renovating homes, helping to ease the lack of affordability, right, of home ownership and adding. We need a lot of housing. We are millions of units behind. And unfortunately, in 2000 and during the Great Recession, late 2000s, early 20 teens, the Dodd-Frank Act came out. I think it was 2013, give or take, 2012. And it made lending very difficult for banks. Now, granted, they got a little over the tips of their skis and they were probably lending to folks that they shouldn't have been lending to and created the whole recession in the first place.
Right.
But the Dodd-Frank Act made it very difficult for banks to lend. And that's really where I cut my teeth, was buying and resolving bad debt in the roughly 10 to 2014, 15 timeframe. So I saw that leverage is an amazing tool. It's like a hammer. You can build a house, but you can also tear a house down with that amazing tool called leverage. And so I think that providing financing, we're helping to improve the built environment. And then I'm really excited about using my own creativity and building teams of people that also want to lean in and build these amazing high performance buildings. Like the last project that we just finished is about 80% powered by the solar rooftop array. We live here in Phoenix, Arizona. Solar should be on every rooftop, man. It's crazy. It should be everywhere.
Absolutely.
We've got a rainwater catchment system. We've got a gray water system. We've got edible landscaping, right? We've got an electric car charging program that we've got basically pre-piped so that we can charge tens of cars in the building. And so we're trying to really be forward thinking in what we're doing. Again, I view the built environment as an amazing opportunity to foster connection among the people. This is just like a simple example, but like you could build a building where all the doors are facing out, right? Or build them where they're all facing in, and the odds of you serendipitously bumping into your neighbor and saying, hey, what's going on? How are you doing this weekend? Or having built environments that slow traffic down and create more walkability versus, built environments that have larger car lanes, faster driving. There's a study, basically the faster the cars go on the street, the fewer connections you have to your neighbors, which is a very interesting, and of course, anecdotally, it makes total sense. I'm not going to cross the street with my kids if cars are ripping down there 45 miles an hour, but if they're going 15 miles an hour, sure, it's no problem. So I would just kind of wrap that thought up in saying, like, the obstacle is the opportunity, and one of the things that always cracks me up here is I think people got really stupid in the earliest 20th century. And what do I mean by that? Well, electricity, we thought this was this brilliant invention, and it is. Well, we didn't invent electricity, but harnessing the power of electricity was amazing. But then people got really dumb because they would build buildings that were facing west with these giant windows. Well, we can just air condition it. It's like, but take the natural environment into consideration, right? Orient the building properly for the sun and the rain and the wind, right? Just do some of the basics. We can build these paper thin walls because we can just air condition this building. Well, yeah, but the air conditioner is going to be running 24/7. You're going to be hot next to the window and cold next to the air conditioner. So it creates uncomfortable environments. And then we started building, using the wrong kind of materials, and we're creating sick homes because the homes are basically like sealed trash bags and you can't get the moisture out. So they create moldy environments and the air filtration isn't working very well. Oftentimes in a home, the air quality is worse than outside. Even in highly polluted environments, the air quality is often worse inside a home than outside. So again, this is my passion. This is where I think I get to be creative. I get to do a lot of good on the planet. And I get to provide investors with great returns for participating in something that is also benefiting their communities. Can you tell I like it?
I was going to say, that's what I love about it. I love talking to you about it because you have this huge passion for it. How did the Navy help you? Because you said it was a seamless transition. What kind of things did the Navy teach you? Because this seems like a lot of stuff. Like, I'm like, how did you learn all this? This is amazing.
Yeah. So a couple of things happened. Number one, I started reading and educating myself as a young kid. I grew up in a middle-class family and we had food, we had shelter. I never worried about those things. But oftentimes there'd be the other kid with the shiny bike or whatever, right? Hey, mom, I want that. We don't have the money. So from a very early age, I learned, this money thing is an obstacle, right? It's an obstacle to living the life that you want. And so I very quickly associated financial independence with freedom, right? And interesting, by the way, mortgage means death pledge, right? Mort engage means death pledge. So I think financial bondage is a very real thing. Kind of like sharecroppers back in the day. But anyway, I digress. So from a young age, I started reading Kiyosaki's Think and Grow Rich. I start reading, Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I start reading Napoleon Hill. I start reading all these other books on financial independence. And I suddenly start to learn, like, money's just an idea. It's just a concept, right? I used to think of it as this very kind of hard defined thing, trade hours of my life for dollars, right? Trade a finite resource, my time and energy, for this infinite non-real thing called money. And once you learn that, like, money's a bit more pliable, you can play with it, you can create value out in the world and generate money that way, it started to change things for me. And so I started educating myself from a young age. I invested in the stock market when I was still in the military. I went to 4 different banks on the same day because I didn't have any money. I was in the military. I was spending all my money on beer. And I get $7,500 loans from 4 different banks on the same day. So I had $30,000 of borrowed money. And I opened a stock trading account, but I didn't open a cash account. I opened a margin account. So I had $60,000 of spending power, right? And I bought stock options. And in like 6 weeks, I'd made like 150 grand, right? I thought I was a genius. And I learned nothing. And fast forward about 6 months, 9 months, 12 months later, the market's up, the market's down, the market's sideways. It's now September. It's now October 2008. I'd just gotten out of the military. I mean, weeks. I just bought my first real estate property, as a little townhouse, $100,000 little townhouse back in Kansas City, Kansas, excuse me. And the market crashes. It's down big, like 900 points in one day. And I lost so much money, owed the brokerage firm 50 grand, and I owed the banks 30 grand. And I'll tell you what, man, I was 23, and it was the best lesson I could have ever been handed, because I had to challenge all of the assumptions. Just like the military, I'm now, getting out, and this probably contributed to some of the dark days I was going through, but I'm now having to challenge, some of my deeply held personal beliefs, but also some of my deeply held financial beliefs. And here were these corporate CEOs saying, everything's fine, everything's fine. It's Friday afternoon. And then by Sunday, they're bankrupt, right? Don't worry, I'll wind down the company and collect my $20 million severance package. Yeah, way to look out for your shareholders. Way to look out for the best interest of those you serve, buddy. You clearly were not cut for the military. So, that pushed me into real estate, and I started deciding, hey, I'm going to get into something that I can more directly influence the outcome. I can actually see behind the curtain. I love real estate because its value won't go to zero, right? It is a hard asset, a tangible asset. It might go down a little bit, it'll come back up, it'll do a few little gyrations, but it's not going to zero. And so for me, real estate was a really wonderful vehicle. And what did I learn in the military? I learned discipline. If you just show up every day and you do the right things, you will have the physique that you want. You will build the business that you want. You will build the following that you want, right? You will be able to train yourself, your mind, and build teams and build a financial portfolio that will allow you to have the life that you want. And getting out of the military, I said it was a seamless transition. The joke there is that I went from like this emergency environment in the military where life was on the line to commercial real estate in Phoenix, Arizona in 2009, 10, and 11, where you certainly felt like your life was on the line. Obviously it wasn't, but it was this kind of high stress emergency environment. And for me, I'm like, hold on. So you're telling me I can make like a lot of money and I'm not going to get killed, and maybe someone's going to yell at me, maybe not. I'm like, this is easy. Sign me up. Let's go. So it was a ton of fun, man. I made a lot of money. More importantly, what I would say to anyone listening that is thinking about it, what I did is I started off as a commercial real estate broker. So I was buying and selling apartment buildings for my clients. And I did that for several years until I had a base of knowledge to be able to go do that on my own. And that's what I started doing. I started doing it on my own. The nice part about that is I got to learn on other people's dime. Now, granted, they were making way more money than I was. I was making a few percentage points. They were making multiples, but I got to see behind the curtain and see how the sausage is made, if you will. And I took that knowledge, and I tell everyone here on my team, I go, listen, you might only make a certain amount of dollars here this year or next year, but what you're learning, you're making millions. You're getting the knowledge that you need to go out and make millions of dollars if you want.
And that's priceless.
So, yeah, exactly.
I love
That's
it.
priceless, man. Knowledge is power.
For sure. What are some of the challenges that you face?
Broadly in real estate?
Generally for you now. Yeah, probably in real estate, what you're doing.
Yeah, well, generally, kids, relationship, that's always a bit hard balancing. I'm the kind of guy, I wish it was like the movie. I love the movie Multiplicity. There's like 3 or 4 or 5 Michael Keatons. I wish there was like 3 or 4 of me, because there'd be one me that's like on the beach surfing every day. There'd be one me that's in the office grinding 12 hours a day. There'd be one me that's hanging out with my kids and wife all day. So balance is really hard for me because I don't have a knob. It's not a dial. It's just a switch. It is either on or off. And so finding that balance is really important, especially now that I have kids. In real estate, trying to do things different is incredibly difficult because you've got these antiquated interests, right? Whether it's a lender and I say, hey, we're going to put $1 million, solar panel system on the rooftop. And they go, ooh, well, I don't know about that. I can't finance that. I can't give you any money for that. I go, but it's literally going to generate energy and reduce my bill, right? It's going to drive profits. And they're going, I've never seen anyone else do that before. Like, you have to be kidding me. Like, this makes total sense. So doing things different, you're fighting the tide on that one. But the nice part is you just have to do a few and prove out the proof of concept. And then suddenly, lenders start to get it. And other people, other investors, other folks start to get it. So doing things different is incredibly difficult, but I'm a bit of a contrarian. So it's worked really well for me in my life. I don't want what 99% of the population has. I don't want it. It's amazing for you. It's not amazing for me, right? So I have to do what 99% of people don't want to do. And that's okay. I love, doing things differently. Other challenges are we find ourselves, at least lately, in an environment with a lot of uncertainty, right?
Mm-hmm.
Fortunately, after the elections now, there's a little bit more certainty. I wouldn't say as much certainty as I would like, but there's at least more certainty. So that's been changing. The geopolitical climate and environment that we've been in lately has been a bit tumultuous. I don't love
For
that.
sure.
So that's been a bit of a challenge. But broadly speaking, where we are here in Phoenix, Arizona is a fantastic market to be in. We're growing rapidly. We're experiencing a lot of population growth. Our employment is fantastic. We've got no natural disasters to speak of. So I'm a big long-term proponent of Arizona and kind of zooming out and getting real big picture. I think that if you look at the planet in like 50 years, and you're looking at satellite photos of the planet in 50 years, you're going to see primarily two colors, maybe three. You're going to see blue because there's a lot of ocean, and you're going to see green, and then maybe a little bit of white here and there at the poles. And I'm hoping that we can do away with a lot of the brown. And what do I mean there? I really think that in the future we are going to reforest at a global scale for many reasons. Number one, this is not a physics problem, right? We don't have to go out to space to get water. There's a lot of water here on Earth, a lot. It's just a problem of fresh water in the right location. So it's not a physics problem, it's an engineering problem. And humans are amazing. And I think there's a tremendous opportunity here for us to reforest the planet, right? It will help sequester carbon, it will increase biodiversity, it will create a timber industry, it will probably create ecotourism, it will help cool some of the little regional pockets of the planet, it will increase rainfall, it will help agriculture in a lot of ways, it will improve the health of the soil. And let's face it, folks, our natural environment is one of our greatest resources. The health of our soil, the health of our food, the health of our planet is one of our greatest resources. So that's something that I think is really exciting when we look forward into the future. And that's why I think places like Phoenix are going to be at the forefront of that, because it's getting so hot here, because we're having to deal with heat island effect, because we're having to deal with hot streets and all of these other lack of rainfall issues. We're becoming a test bed for innovation. And if you look at the Middle East right now, these people are very smart. They are
Mm-hmm.
aware that the petroleum economy will not last forever. And you look at some of the innovation that is coming out of the Middle East, these people really are hyper aware that they need to come up with new solutions to create different environments for them to be successful and thrive in the future. So I'm really excited. It's going to get a little bit more difficult between now and there, in that bright shining future. But I believe in a world of abundance, and
I
I think
love
the
it.
only thing that limits us is our belief.
Oh, I love it. I love it. And thank you for sharing that. Speaking of reforesting, could you tell us a little bit about is it Madre Tierra Foundation? Could you talk a
Yeah,
little bit about what that is?
yeah, please. It's a foundation my wife and I started, and we've done a few little projects. She's big into education, so I'm big into kind of the short and medium term stuff. There's a great quote from Confucius. It's at least attributed to Confucius. I wasn't there, and he said, "If you're planning for a year, plant rice. If you're planning for a decade, plant trees. And if you're planning for a century, educate kids." And my wife's big into education. She's got her master's from a really great school back east. And what we've done with our school or our foundation is we've actually started two schools. One was here in Arizona, one is down in Costa Rica. And we funded a few other small reforestation projects. And so what we do is we just use the foundation as a vehicle to do the things in life that we are passionate about. And I think that's what you can do in business. I'm passionate about the built environment, so I've got a business around the built environment. And obviously that passion kind of comes through. I exude it, I think, in a lot of ways, because it really does fire me up. And that's what we do with our foundation is we try and help people that are doing good, fiscally.
Love it. Awesome. That's fantastic. I think that's good. That's cool that you get to partner with your wife on that too. I think that's a neat thing to have together as
Yeah, it's
well.
easy. I just do what she tells me.
Absolutely. And then you're smart. Yeah, good man.
Yeah.
This has been super fun for me. You do exude a lot of excitement and energy for what you're doing. You're adventurous with the base jumping and all that as well. So just kind of to end up here, my last question for you is, for you, Thomas, then what does adventure mean to you?
It means putting yourself in a situation that you don't know how to get out of. And when you do that, this funny little thing that I call forced evolution happens. And when you put yourself in a situation you don't know how to get out of, you have to think, you have to change, you have to grow. And it can just be as simple as going to a foreign country or going to a city where you don't know where you're going, right? You have to learn something in that new environment. And so I love using adventure as a means to force my own evolution, force my own growth. So to me, to sum that up, that's what that's what adventure is. It's putting yourself in situations that you're not quite, you might have a plan, but you're not quite sure how to get out of, or at least you're not sure until you've done it, how you're going to get out.
Excellent. Thomas, thank you so much for coming on Journey with Jake.
Jake, this has been great, man. Super fun. You're crushing it, and I had a blast.
Thank you so much to my guest, Thomas McPherson. What an incredible conversation. Thomas, I truly appreciate your openness and vulnerability in sharing where you've been and what you're doing today. For those of you who want to learn more about Thomas and his work, be sure to check out his business website, Lukrom.com, and that's spelled Lukrom. Can you believe it? Journey with Jake is now over 3 years old, and my passion for this podcast is as strong as ever, maybe even stronger. I'm so excited about where we're headed and grateful to have you along for the ride. On a personal note, I'm thrilled to share that I had the honor of contributing to the book Sacred Spaces, Volume 3. My story is featured in Chapter 8, and it offers a deeper look into my background and how Journey with Jake came to be. I encourage you to check it out on Amazon when it launches on February 18th. It's a project close to my heart, and just like I encourage my guests to be vulnerable, I shared my own story in this book. Looking ahead, next week on Journey with Jake, I'm sitting down with Bjorn Lesterud, or Lesterud. I don't know if I said it right. We'll find out next week. Bjorn is passionate about natural healing and has some fascinating stories to share, including adventures involving mushrooms that you absolutely have to hear to believe. It's going to be another amazing episode, so stay tuned. As always, remember, it's not always about the destination, as it is about the journey. Until next time, take care, everybody.